I ran as fast as I could, hoping that the wretched creatures weren't going to be there to greet me. My equipment was scattered in the atrium of the cave, where the water stood still. There, the reflections of my torches danced on the surface, distorting the contents beneath. Imagining monsters at every turn, my heart pounded as I leapt from the walkway into the river, where the last of my belongings were floating. The chilling cold didn't distract me, but by the time I had checked that I'd picked everything up, it was dark. Squids greeted me peacefully as I re-entered the water. Their disinterest gave me a few moments to prop a ladder back up to the walkway. I had anticipated the need for more wood and had chopped some acacia earlier that day before I met the Enderman. It came in handy now, as after I scrambled out of the river, I decided to fortify the small section of the cave I had already explored. The light from my previously placed torches were effective in warding off the monsters, and I finished the wall undisturbed. This time, I wasn't going to underestimate the area and decided to make a bed. As I nestled in for the night, I felt myself magically bonding to the bed, and as I did, Nellie glowed. With my new base, I felt safe as I scoped out the surrounding area. Previously, when I had visited, I was always in a hurry and often flustered. Now, with time, the wind and the sun, I could appreciate its beauty. My calmness remained even as an exploding creeper dented the hill. In the peace of the morning, I tried my hand at fishing. The rod that Nellie had shown me how to make wasn't working. Nellie always begrudged me when I blamed my tools. After a deep breath, I faced the tunnels of the cave. There were a few to pick from, but an angry spider made the choice for me. His feet couldn't stick to the flowing water, and he chittered as I looked down on him. This time, when I placed some ladders, I noticed the structure banished the nearby water. The magic of Nellie's recipes was still surprising me. With an escape route ready for the engagement, I hopped down. The spider, it seems, was taunting me, and immediately sought the high ground before flinging itself on top of my head. This wasn't my first rodeo, and I batted the spider away. In the small tunnels, I kept to my rule of placing torches to the left. With my sword and the slowly encroaching halls of light, I drove the monsters back. The spoils in the first instance were a heap of coal and a little copper ore. Where there were junctions in the tunnels, I placed torches on the floor. One tunnel led to an underground ravine. I was only just dipping my toes into caving for the moment, and not wanting to bite off more than I could chew, I took the copper ore in the same tunnel and turned around. I mined everything I could, leaving brightly lit passages behind me. Sometimes I had to build scaffolds, and sometimes I had to dig stairs into the rock to traverse safely. The copper and coal were becoming more frequent, and I found myself burning through pickaxes. A welcome problem, and one that was easily remedied with a quick trip back to the fortified section of the tunnel I was temporarily living in. As the days passed, I came to learn more about the environment around me. I was in need for ever more wood for the base, and on the plains above I tried to choose trees that were obstructing my view, and hence my orientation. Not wanting to disturb the local balance too much, I replanted a choice few I had felled. After another go at fishing, I found success, with a look from Nellie that suggested, "I told you so." There was a whole school of fish in the river, but as with the trees, I didn't want to be too greedy. I caught 3, but was surprised when the last fish I pulled up was a pufferfish. It didn't look safe to consume. As well as getting to better grips with nature, I was also learning more about my monstrous foes. As I lured a zombie into the daylight, he burned in the sun as I had expected, but I failed to appreciate that the flames he was consumed by could go both ways. As it touched my skin, I was suddenly engulfed, but the pools of the cave came to my rescue, and for the first time, I felt gratitude for the place I was exploring. I found that the safety of my forward base gave rise to other advantages. It gave me time, arguably the most precious of resources, to delve into Nellie's recipes. In my state of calm and determination, new problems became opportunities to devise novel solutions. Together we made a bow, although for the time being I wouldn't be able to use it as I had no arrows. Nellie had discovered the recipe for arrows when I had found flint from gravel, but I didn't have any feathers, so for now I remained harmless at range. For days I delved into the depths of the cave, found copious amounts of coal and copper before returning to empty my pockets and resupply, as well as adding bits and bobs to my temporary home. On one outing I was lucky enough to also find some lapis lazuli embedded in a vein of coal. I avoided becoming complacent, chiefly because of the oddities I was still encountering. I barely spotted the tall frame of the Enderman that had previously hunted me. It didn't seem aggressive at this time, and I averted my gaze. This show of respect seemed enough to placate the creature. I was losing track of the days. The best thing would be to come up from the cave at first light, ramble around and wander the local hills, only to return to the cave when the land was dark. This seemed impossible though, as the gloomy tunnels warped my sense of day and night. I might not be underground for too much longer though, as it seemed I had explored all the nooks and crannies of the cave, with the exception of one passageway, if you could call it that. I returned to the underground ravine, ensuring to be careful with my footing, making the area safe along the way. Once again, I carved out stairs into the shadows below. I tried to use the nature of the environment and the nature of my foes against them. Despite still hearing the clacking of skeletons, the area was clear and I took everything I saw. After dislodging some iron ore, I was surprised to find a block of cobblestone on the wall. That's when I put two and two together and guessed that this is where the sounds were coming from. I cracked a hole into the side of the dungeon and reeled back as I saw it was crawling with skeletons. Steeling myself, I swiped at their ankles, and the mindless beasts shot at me. In their aggression, they started hitting each other, and a brawl erupted amongst themselves. As the noises in the dank room died down, I stormed to the breach to find a chilling sight. A fiery cage on the floor was summoning the monsters. Inside, an effigy of a skeleton contorted and oscillated within its magic prison. Instinctively, I knew what must be done, and saturated the cage with light. The monster's natural enemy pacified the summoning object, though the miniature skeleton still writhed angrily. It was only then that I investigated the treasures it was guarding. Inside the chests I found a new mineral. Nellie told me the substance was called redstone and had numerous intriguing properties. The chests also contained armour for horses and gunpowder. I didn't know why the skeletons were guarding these chests, whether it was them that had collected the materials, or if they even knew about them at all. Perhaps, once upon a time, the skeletons were knights that rode armoured horses into battle, and maybe even had collected the gunpowder from slain creepers. Or had someone intended their treasures to be guarded by the mindless warriors? I doubt I'd ever know, and for now that didn't matter, because I was in possession of some exciting possibilities. I'd have to tease them out later, but what could be immediately useful was the handful of arrows the skeletons had dropped for me. I'd grown attached to this place, and even though I had conquered the cave, I wasn't ready to leave just yet. I had an idea to make travelling back here easier. It was the first time I'd properly excavated anywhere, and the chests of the base were filling with cobblestone. The furnaces blazed as I worked, cooking up the ample amounts of copper that I had found here. One morning, as I went out to get more wood, a group of men stood on the hill, staring at me. I was stunned and froze when I saw that each of them was wielding a crossbow. I readied my new bow, just in case. The standoff tensed, which gave me time to eat my breakfast. Tentatively, I stepped forward and they jeered at me. Ignoring their crude words, I sheathed my weapon and approached to hail them. This may have been the moment of weakness they were waiting for, or my confidence had intimidated them, because all 5 men suddenly attacked. As I backed up with my shield raised, I lured the assailants into a narrow ditch. That created a strong defensive position where my shield protected me from all fire, and I could even angle and deflect some of the bolts back at my foes, the ones that weren't hitting themselves, that is. I kept that up until the monsters arrived. My shield was starting to crack and I reeled away. The zombie lurched past me, instead their dead eyes fixed on the raiders. My shield absorbed one final crossbow bolt before shattering when I was set upon by a spider. I retreated as I fought off the beast. When it was slain, I was left exposed in the face of another loaded crossbow, but quick thinking got me out of that tight spot. Hearing the sounds of battle quieten, I crept forward, this time with my own bow. I played the assailant at his own game, and it seemed that my arrow made his miss. The fifth and final raider was nowhere to be seen. As I searched for the final baddie, I felt at one with my sword. A small amount of skill led to overconfidence, and I found myself peering into another cave just to see what I could see. I wasn't approaching this situation by the rules I'd set myself. Despite some more quick thinking, hubris still overcame me, and I was outsmarted by a skeleton. 3 times. Falling in such rapid successions left my head spinning, and I collapsed into bed before retrieving my items for the final time. The loss of magical power was palpable, and I was engrossed in my thoughts as I accidentally wandered into a village. It was the same farming village I'd run into before when I was really lost. This time, they seemed to recognise me, and some of the villagers hurried over. They asked me if I was the gallant adventurer they'd heard about. Humbled by my recent encounter with the skeleton, I brushed away their compliment. They wanted to know all about me, and I told them that I had recently taken up temporary residence in the cave over yonder. When they asked if I knew anything about the frightened raider they had seen running from my direction, I couldn't lie about it. After that, the villagers were very interested in cooperation and trade, but I really had nothing to give them. That just made the villagers more adamant, and I had to slip away as their excitement grew. That night, as I worked, I heard the unmistakable sound of llamas above me. It took me a moment to realise that the llama's leads were not floating in thin air, but were in fact held by the merchant that had visited my home previously, who was currently invisible. He left me perplexed at first before revealing himself. I confronted him about just how the villagers knew about me, and he chortled, ignoring my frustrations. I tried to tell him that I wasn't the warrior who painted me out to be. Again, an invisible mouth belted out laughter. Allowing me to get as irritated as possible without popping, he finally spoke candidly. He had seen my fight with the raiders, and had seen how I'd fought monsters. These lands were perilous for the villagers that inhabited them, and they rarely had anyone on their side, for even between the peaceful villagers there was quarrelling. The raiders I had encountered came from a larger group that regularly extorted the locals. He said there is only so much one can do, but just asked that if I could help, I should. As he turned to leave, he asked how Fish was doing, and I felt a pang of homesick. From his tone, I wondered if he knew my secret. That on my demise, instead of perishing, I fell back to this world. It was time to go. I couldn't bring everything with me, and left piles of excess copper and coal. The toy fort I was leaving behind was still partly the rocky tunnel I had inhabited when I arrived. What I had added was a rough boathouse, and it felt good to have proper access to the sea via the river. On leaving, I erected a few pillars in honour of this place's new name, Copperwater Cave. As I set sail, I passed sand on the bank and grabbed some, remembering the TNT recipe Nellie had showed me. That was potentially one compelling way I could utilise all the gunpowder I'd found in the dungeon. As usual, Nellie had some more bright ideas. On the sea, I saw the little island with the strange structure from a closer look than my plateau. And then, for the first time, I saw my home from the other side. It was a good thing I wasn't afraid of heights. I docked in a shielded rock pool at the bottom of the gravelly cliffs I knew I could climb, and strolled past the monsters in the area. I had a lot to think about after seeing the merchant again, but for now, my home, even with its open windows, gave me comfort enough to forget about that. And after celebrating my return with Fish, and saying goodnight, I slept. Deeply. I really thought this was going to be the episode where Fall didn't die, but I got overconfident and there we go. I've also realised that building things really is my time sink in Minecraft, and it still felt like I rushed the boathouse. I went overboard with writing this episode, so it ended up really long. I'm aiming for the shorter side of between 10 and 15 minutes. And because of that, I actually missed a Fall the Fall moment. I've included it here, but essentially I placed a cake down, didn't know how it worked, and it got wasted. So yeah, thank you everyone, and I hope you all enjoyed.